So today we have Ambassador Nagmana Alamgir Hashmi. She is currently serving as an independent director at First Women Bank, Karachi, Vice Chairperson of Council on Global Affairs and Advisor Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. In her distinguished career of over 37 years, she has been appointed as Ambassador of Pakistan to China, European Union, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Ireland. And next to him is Engineer Khurram Dastagir Khan. He has served as Federal Minister for Energy as well as Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Defense in Government of Pakistan. He has been member National Assembly from August 2008 to 2018. As a parliamentarian, he served on the Special Parliamentary Committee on Kashmir, Finance Committee of the National Assembly, Special Committee on Threats to Journalists, and the Standing Committee on National Regulation and Services, as well as Standing Committee on the MDGs. At the Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Khan revitalized Pakistan's trade diplomacy and spearheaded the successful campaign to obtain GSP plus trade preferences for Pakistan from the European Union. He also led vital negotiation to obtain reciprocal market access for Pakistan. Next to him is Mr. Haroon Sharif. He is serving as chairman of Pakistan's Regional Economic Forum. He has also served as the Minister of State and Chairman Board of Investment from 2018 to 19 in the government of Pakistan. He has also been Pakistan's lead representative for industrial cooperation under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Mr. Sharif is well-known global expert of economic policy, international development, economic diplomacy, and financial market. And next to him is Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri. He is Executive Director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, member of the International Advisory Committee of COP29. That is an advisory body to the COP. Okay. And lastly, we have Dr. Muiz Yusuf. He has joined us online. He is Vice Chancellor of Beacon House National University. Dr. Yusuf previously served as National Security Advisor to Prime Minister of Pakistan. With this, now I would request Dr. Abid for his introductory remarks.
For the drone, I think the noise will be disturbing, especially when we'll like to take Moeed on line. तो अगर आप ड्रोन थोड़ी देर के लिए भाई जरा बंद कर दीजिए प्लीज. Thank you. Yes, it's better. It's better now. Moise is online. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, for the day 2 of our annual conference, where the theme that we will be discussing with our eminent panelists today, the broader theme is all about sustainable development from fragility to resilience. And just to give you a background about it, why we chose this theme. So basically, our hypothesis is that the type of vagaries and type of uncertainties, the type of shocks that the world in general and Pakistan in particular went through during 2024, that was a sort of unprecedented. Those were unprecedented, but we saw that humanity, the world, as well as the region and Pakistan, they showed its resilience. And now we want to take it further that from fragility to resilience, what are the factors which can affect in continuation of this resilience? What are some sources of uncertainties? Yesterday, we had wonderful discussion around climate change, around climate financing, around legal framework of climate finance, as well as the macroeconomic policies. And in the last session, it was very aptly pointed out by the speakers, including Country Director IMF, Country Director World Bank, Country Director UNDP, and our distinguished guest from Sri Lanka, Dr. Dushni Veerakonda, that there are certain external factors as well as political economy and geopolitical economy that can affect economic resilience of any country. And it is those geoeconomic factors that we'll be discussing today. How the economic geographies are being redrawn, how there are challenges as well as shared prospects for sustainability, for stability and resilience. and for that matter, how the voting in United States, which is taking place, which is, I think, must be over by now, how that would affect Pakistan, how any escalation in the Middle Eastern situation that would affect Pakistan, especially if the energy prices they go beyond $95 per barrel, and a lot of other factors. But to set the scene, I'm requesting Harun Sharif to give his remarks for around 7 to 10 minutes, Harun. And then we'll be coming to all members of panel, including Moeed, and we'll take your take on different questions that you would be raising.
Can I do that?
Yes, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to everybody. Thank you very much, Dr. Abid Suleri, Shafkat Kaka Khail Saab, my dear friend, Mr. Khurram Dastagir, Ambassador Hashmi, and virtually Moeed Yusuf. It's good to be here this morning to speak about a topic which I've been working on for almost 20 years now, that this whole shift towards an emerging regional market, what does it mean for us in terms of reviving the economy, being resilient to risks, which Abid has just mentioned, or is it just a populist political slogan? Connectivity. Because a lot has been talked about, connectivity. So I will try and do these 7 minutes in 3-4 parts. So if I start with basically saying that, the first thing is for people like SDPI, policymakers, commentators, we need to think about more deeply about the transition. We are in a transitional phase where uncertainty and risks of all sorts have really grown bigger. When we say risks, it's not only the climate risk. We saw the pandemic risk. We saw the macroeconomic fragility risk because inflation beat the global. We saw the disruption risk. So the main thing at the moment when I talk to countries like in the Gulf and in the region, the point I would try to start my scene setting is that how can countries, including China, Gulf, and Pakistan, can de-risk their existence and growth and make it sustainable. So the de-risking part is one of the huge, debate which has come, and people are taking different approaches to address that issue. Some of the changes I would like to highlight, which you already know. For instance, there are multiple centers of economic power which have emerged. And when I read the future top 20 economies, almost 8 comes from Asia. So very clearly a shift is happening. Are we getting that shift? And emerging markets, I was talking to one of the Nobel laureates, Michael Spence, the other day in a question answer session. And he basically maintained that it's not only Pakistan, all emerging markets will refuse to take sides. They will have to learn to work with multiple centers of power. So it's an interesting time that at one time we were asked to take sides in a unipolar or a bipolar world. Now there are multiple players to deal with. So that is one change I think we need to carefully look at. Belt and Road Initiative is perhaps the biggest disruption of our times around us. What does it mean? I would like to reframe the question of connectivity today and would like to open up debate. Do we continue selling connectivity as the panacea or the answer for our ills? Or do we work towards making connectivity work for us? Now, these are two very clear, distinct ways of looking at connectivity. we and the others have been selling as game changer. We connect the roads and ports. People question, what are they getting out of it? What does this 30 billion investment of China and Pakistan mean for us? Now, how can we make it work for building resilience? How can we make it work for revival of economy? That is a question I think we need to debate rather than saying that we keep on connecting, through physical infrastructure. My third thought is that a couple of things which I would like to highlight, which are linked to that. For a country like Pakistan, which has been dependent on multilateral concessional financing, I would challenge, and what has happened is that now Pakistan is one of the debt-stressed countries. Now, can we really make an economic proposition where investment starts coming in to replace the debt rather than looking for debt write-offs? Because the write-offs are perhaps far more complicated than actually inviting fresh capital and changing the way we think. Do we really think that global financial architecture has delivered? Not many people question. Dr. Suleri was mentioning, and I briefly opened up this conference yesterday on a website. So we had all the heads of multilaterals sitting. But has anybody challenged the multilaterals or evaluated their 50 years of performance? Or will that lead to regional multilateralism? It is too early to actually make a shift. But if they are not delivering, alternate system will start emerging, So that's what the connectivity is all about. Now, I will take 1 minute explaining that when we speak about this new economic geography, which is Pakistan, Western Asia, Central Asia, Western China, I will just give you some numbers. Are we investing enough to understand this market and geography? Western China alone is 370 million people. Central Asia, 82 million people. Afghanistan, 43 million people. I'm not counting Iran and others. Pakistan, 250 million people. Now there's a market of 700 to 800 million people which actually can evolve, let's say, over time. Mostly young people. For instance, the median age in Central Asia is 26. The median age in Pakistan is 21. The median age in Afghanistan is 17. So we are dealing with an mostly urban, younger population in the region. Now, how can we make this market work? That is the question I'm posing, and make it work for building sustainable development, making work to work against shocks. And that's the debate I think we will do it. Couple of points here. Now, how do people in EU, for instance, or ASEAN, the successful regional countries, how have they done it? Have we thought about the foundations? Let me assure you, with no disrespect to Lahore-Islamabad motorway, if I do an economic assessment of Lahore-Islamabad motorway, I think the returns would be hugely negative in economic terms. It might be positive for the rich people who drive cars. It might be positive for the political populist gains. But if that investment was done instead in the railway system, perhaps a lot more trade could have taken place. As an economist, I would challenge. Now, do we want this infrastructure from Gwadar to Kashi to be again roads and rail links and ports? Or do we want this? So the first point for today's debate, if we want to make it work, we need to come up with policies and institutions to attract private capital around this connectivity, not only by Pakistan, but open it up to the region. That is my first, point. Second question, Abid, I will raise for today is that are we investing enough about knowledge production of the market? Do we really know the market? I was speaking to 5 universities in Lahore last week, and I asked them question that, can you name 10 cities of Central Asia? None of the students could name it. And I rest my case. So how do we learn more about the dynamics if we want to do complementary? If proximity is to be used as a tool for economic advantage, how do we actually use it? Are we thinking about harmonizations of ports and reaching to a customs union? Are we thinking of our own SCO happened? Are we thinking of a multilateral financing arrangement to make this connectivity work? Do we have, institutions of regional nature that we start thinking regional? Do we have companies of, trade logistics which are owned by 10 countries and they are all shared objectives? Now, unless and until we make this connectivity work, it will remain the way we did pipeline projects through donors for the past 30 years. It's TAPI and CASA and Iran. Nothing has materialized. That's the reality. So we need to make connectivity work. Now, my parting and leaving thought to my panelists, we have very eminent diplomat, Khurram Saab, I don't know which ministry I should attribute him to, but he and I have worked together for years on that. 2 questions. Will connectivity or this regional market? It is a longer term proposition. Can this connectivity address the fault lines and risks of Pakistan in next 5 years? Or so rather than getting obsessed with connectivity, do we work on our competitiveness with our traditional partners as well? Or we just focus our energies here? My assessment is that connectivity is a very longer term game. It is a rather overrated game. Mostly our donor friends and politician friends love it because it's visible. It takes a lot of money, but developing markets is a very long-term process. Unless we can actually bring lots of stakes in it, it cannot start creating our fault lines, create jobs for young people. Our fault line, improve export by 15% every year. Third fault line, bring in technology to have value addition. Fourth fault line, how do you adapt to technology as the future of development is artificial intelligence, not the raw labor advantage? Now, how do we use all that? And then knowledge about climate change and resilience. I would like Ambassador Nagmana hopefully to talk about how China does it. What can we learn from that? Or is that relationship only taking money from China? It has to be wider. Khurram Saab knows politics like not many others do. Is political mindset ready to think differently? Are we ignoring the largest market on our eastern side? Isn't Pakistan the biggest landlocked country despite having borders with all? When you don't talk to countries, you are landlocked. So I would raise all these questions to ourselves today. Let's think about it. There are 2 largest economies in our neighborhood which will contribute to 50% of revival of global growth. Are we ready for it? Is our diplomatic mindset ready for it? Do we have the capability to think about economic diplomacy? I can go on, but I hope some of these questions will be raised today. I will close my scene setting that it's a reality that we are getting a new regional economic bloc. It will take time. It's a reality that unless we build institutions and raise private capital, this bloc will not yield economic returns. It's a reality basically that now from globalization, we are moving towards regionalization. China is the biggest player, but do we understand that how to take advantage of Western China? Our trade balance remains negative with China. Do we have enough to sell? So these are the questions to build, and then when are we talking about climate shocks and post-pandemic shocks and health shocks of future? These are certain thoughts. It was a wake-up session in the morning. I thought I'll put lots of provocative things so that now I can rest and my friends will answer questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harun, for this excellent and very thought-provoking scene setting. Just to alert two of my South Asian friends who are sitting in a hall, Dr. Dushni Veerakun and Dr. Rajan Ratna. In the second round, I'll also drag you in the discussion. So don't tell me that I never informed you. I'm informing you that after taking the first round with our panelists, I'll like to hear from you your perspective as well. So I'll be throwing a question each to both of you. I hope Paras is also around from Nepal. Is he here? Okay. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. So we have Paras Kal from Nepal. We have Dushni Veerakun from Sri Lanka. We have Rajan Ratna representing UNESCAPE based in Delhi. So it would be really interesting to get their viewpoint in this discussion as well. But let me go to Mohit Yusuf. Mohit, you heard it all, and you are, of course, the credit goes to you that the Pakistan's first national security policy was drafted under your supervision, where you actually put economy as the pivot and as the central to key to Pakistan's security, the economic security. Now, the type of these new economic geographies that are taking shape around us, be it BRICS or SCO, or it's V20, which is now 70 countries, and many others. So, do you feel in the context of Harun's comments that Pakistan's economic security can gain from some of these developments, and if we need to prepare ourselves, what sort of preparations do you foresee?
Thank you. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, Mohit, loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Dr. Saab, and to SDPI for always thinking of me. I'm sorry I couldn't make it physically. I was hoping to, but some engagements kept me here. So I think I should start with an apology. Probably woken up on the wrong side of the bed. I'm going to be very brief and very blunt. And where I want to begin is to say that I actually now, the more I think about this, feel sorry for people like Harun Saab and everybody on your panel and myself, because we come and have these conversations on these panels, make all the right points, the audience understands it, we have a debate, and nobody is interested, full stop. I think there is an existential problem here. We are talking to each other in an echo chamber, and it's falling on deaf ears. And beyond a point, frankly, I don't know where this takes us as a group, as a country, as intelligentsia. All I can tell you, Abid, quite honestly, is that every capital of the world I visit, and I talk about Pakistan, people just look the other way. We have a problem. If we don't want to acknowledge it, we don't want to wake up, that's our choice. The entire framing of this panel is absolutely correct. The work that Harun Saab and his group are doing, I was also initially part of it, is exactly right. That is exactly where Pakistan needs to go. But parochial interests, personal interests, short-sightedness, I can keep putting words here. And I think we are pretty clearly moving in a direction where none of this is going to come to pass. The questions that Harun Saab laid out at the very end are the right questions. Unfortunately, he knows the answers himself. And if we are not going to move in the direction that he has laid out, or your panel actually, your write-up of the panel has laid out, the world is not going to wait for us. And I think now we are really at a point where it's now or never, as far as I'm concerned. to specifically say 2 or 3 things. First of all, I think a very simple structural question has to be answered. I don't know the answer to that. You say that the national security policy was conceived and developed under me. Yes. Where are we on it? As a country, are we moving in the direction that was consensually agreed to by the leadership? Are we moving in a different direction? If it's a different direction, what is that direction? Because as far as I can tell, the conversation, the language is still that of the national security policy, but the direction seems to be either unclear or stalled or opposite. I don't know. I'm not as close to the scene as I should be to know. You are sitting in Islamabad, you can educate me, but I don't think there is any clarity in any capital that I visit on where do we stand on the direction that we promised ourselves and the world we want to move in. And that's kind of the direction that, of course, Harun Sahib has laid out and your panel is built around. Second, if you want to implement a vision of economic security, economic diplomacy built around private transactions, connectivity, then there is a second order question, which is, and I put it to you, maybe somebody on the panel can educate me. If I were to go around the key ministries of the federal government of Pakistan and ask the definition of economic diplomacy and ask who is responsible for economic diplomacy of the country, will I get one answer from all of them or different answers? At least when I was doing this, every single one gave me a different answer. And my conclusion was we are not even at the point where we understand what economic diplomacy means. Do we have an economic diplomacy coordination mechanism? The Foreign Ministry, Commerce Ministry, Industries, Overseas Ministry, IT, Finance, those entities who have to do common economic diplomacy together. Is there a mechanism there? Do they actually come together, sit and talk about how to train ourselves to move away from political diplomacy and invest more time in economic diplomacy? Do we have people who go and market us to the IT world who are IT specialists? Do we go and market medical tourism of Pakistan through hospitals and those who know that business? Or are we still dependent on generalists who are very good in their own right, but are not suited for a specialized world? So if we are not making the very basic fundamental investments in moving in this direction, I think there's no point talking about what outcomes we are going to get. It's very clear. I mean, if we keep doing what we've been doing for 75 years, you'll get the same outcome. And that's, I think, the dichotomy that I hope this panel takes head on. Then we talk about private transactions, building transactions, private sector. You know, the world has very clearly signaled, even our oldest friends, anywhere you go, the conversation is no longer whether we are a good friend, where we have an Islamic bond or an ethnic bond or a friendly bond. The conversation is put a bankable transaction on the table and we will work with Pakistan. And I ask the panel again, do we have the capacity to build bankable transactions and projects that can actually work in a commercial sense and compete with the rest of the world? If the answer is yes, we have a future. If the answer is no, we've got to get there, or the world will, you know, basically pass us by. And again, I'm afraid most of the times I get the answer in the negative. And finally, let me just say this, underpinning all of this is a question that I think was alluded to. I am part of a global project at the Harvard Kennedy School on middle powers, looking at countries like Pakistan, India, Indonesia, Brazil, etc. Countries who don't want to pick a side in the US-China rivalry, but are being squeezed. And while it is true that multi-alignment is the future, it's not going to be one or the other. I think that the ability of a country to be able to avoid that binary choice is going to be directly proportional to the internal strength of that country. The weaker you are internally, the less likely you are to be able to avoid that binary choice. And so if the internal strength is a marker of whether you will have to fall in a camp or be able to benefit from both camps. I think we are decidedly in the negative right now. So all of this comes together to say that I think we need to be honest about where we want to go and then invest in the tools that are going to take us there. I'm not saying that we should move in the NSP direction. You can move in the anti-NSP direction. That's fine. Just clarify what we need. How in that model will we build in these private transactions, these bankable projects? How will we develop the capacity for economic diplomacy, and how will we bring about connectivity? Whatever that direction is. And then those tools need to be funded and resourced to get to that point. My only worry is that we continue to have these conversations while the world moves on. And if that's the trajectory, I'm afraid we will be one of those countries who will be forced to pick a side under duress on somebody else's terms. And that's probably the worst nightmare that I can imagine. And I really hope it doesn't come to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.